Okay, folks, it's time for Dr. David Markwell from Ridgeline Counseling is joining us now on the phone. Dr. Markwell, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I know in a short period of time we can't cover everything, but we're going into the holidays, specifically Thanksgiving is just around the corner, and then we have Christmas. So there's so many things that during the holidays that take place that I want to try to cover a little at a time. Let's talk about family and possibly Thanksgiving dinner, and maybe somebody saying the wrong thing, or maybe politics coming up, or the wrong subject. Oh my gosh! Or knowing that uncle or aunt's going to be there. Should I stop now?
Right. Right.
Let's talk about a little of that and how to take a deep breath and not let it bother us. But let's talk about that Thanksgiving dinner with the family that comes together maybe one time a year, and there might be some minor conflict.
Absolutely. Well, there are several major life events that can, what I would say, make or break a lot of family relationships. For example, a wedding, a funeral, and then definitely holidays. And I think with coming up on Thanksgiving, and then right after that you have the holidays in December. Definitely, as you said, a lot of times families are getting together, some that have not seen each other for a long period of time, and differing views on life and politics and life changes that have occurred and so forth. So it definitely can prove to be a very stressful time, even though a lot of commercials on the television, the radio, and the songs all talk about joy and happiness and things like this. It doesn't take very long to see that a lot of, for example, movies. One of my favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life, but I also understand that there are other holiday movies that definitely portray probably a more realistic kind of family tradition and conflict that can happen.
Well, and exactly that when you have Thanksgiving, and there may be some discussion of something, and I think a lot of times I was looking at something, and they said they were going to, the other day on social media, and they said picture said they were going to save a lot of money on holiday gifts because Thanksgiving they were going to bring up politics. And by time we got into the Christmas season, nobody would want any gifts from. I guess that's it. So I think it could be a tense time. But let's also go into. Let's say you lost a loved one. There's the holidays bring up a lot of first. The first time, having Thanksgiving meal with a family without a family member. The first time celebrating Christmas without a family member. It can be a very difficult time for those that have lost a loved one throughout the year. Can it not?
It can. And, really with regard to not only like loss of a loved one, friend of a family member, but as you mentioned something about just the conflict, one of those things that I think plays a huge role is the importance of managing our expectations going into the holidays. If we go into, for example, Thanksgiving thinking that, hey, it's going to be fantastic, no one's going to have arguments, no one's going to bring up politics, we may need to manage our expectations differently, meaning that we go into it with some more realistic goals, which would be something like, my goal is basically to just kind of catch up on how life is going for them, not bring up any kind of hot topics or anything, or if they're brought up outside of myself, to do my very best to not engage or not try to get into the point where the whole holiday period is I guess devastated based on the conversations. But you're exactly right with regard to loss and grief. It definitely can play a huge role, especially the first year for many people who've lost loved ones and, as I said, family members and friends of family. That definitely can play a role because, again, like I mentioned about movies and songs, and talks about people getting together, and this person is now recognizing that person isn't with them in a physical kind of way, and it can bring a lot of reminders of the loss and sadness.
Well, I want to thank you very much, because I wrote down while you were talking there, do not engage. Do not engage. I think I should write that 100 times. Do not engage. That's a personal takeaway for me. I don't know about the audience if they're going to admit to a personal takeaway, but for me, it's do not engage. Do you know my let's see. I want to stay nice, Dr. Markwell. I feel like I'm sharing now, but the two things for me on the holidays is I pray. One, it's not raining, and I'll tell you why it's not raining, and two, it's not too terribly cold. The reason being is, so that way, if I get into that I better not engage mood, and I might engage, I can put my jacket on, take a walk outside in the yard, take a couple deep breaths, and come back in. So I said, please don't let it rain and be too cold. Is that wrong?
No, in fact, I think that's actually a lot of people, I think, that whole thought, because it is, definitely colder temperatures, and especially if you're talking about extreme cold or rain, then you are kind of like in a contained area, and that definitely, especially if the topic is beginning to escalate or whatever. But the reason I mentioned about engaging is because a lot of times what gets triggered in conversations, of course, is our ego, and a lot of times it can get to the point where we either feel like we're being attacked, or sometimes we reach a point where we've reached, as the old saying is, our limit, and then we come out with some type of response, and usually it's not a positive response. It may be a lot of reactions. From a therapist standpoint, I'll tell you what's interesting is a lot of people who've been making progress in therapy a lot of times will go back and lose a little bit of ground, because when they go back, even if they're adults, when they go back to, let's say, for example, parents' house or grandparents' house, even as an adult, the dynamic that's always been there kind of falls back into place again. If they're the youngest growing up and now they're an adult, they're still kind of treated like the youngest. So that in itself can also play a role with, as I mentioned, about managing the expectations.
If you've let me ask you one more question before we go, because as we go through the holiday season, the one thing I don't want to do is make light of Thanksgiving or make light of the holiday season and how difficult it is for some. And I want to double back. Give me one or two, or give our audience one or two things as far as if you're struggling, you're alone now, and it's the first year without husband, wife, lifelong partner, and you're alone now. What are some of the things you would recommend? Because there's a different side of depression and going through the holidays at this time. What are some of the things you recommend for someone that's struggling through that this time of the year?
If possible, and I know it's not always a possibility for people, but if possible, to engage with other people, even though they may not emotionally feel like going to some type of religious activity or family activity, or maybe a local play that's on or something, just so that they don't begin to kind of withdraw to themselves and just stay within their own thoughts and feelings. They do need to kind of engage to kind of move outside of that. The other thing that some people do during this time period is they will find some way to do some type of memorializing for the person. They may go out and adopt a family or donate to some type of cause in memory of the person, so that they feel like that there's this continuation of like paying it forward in behalf of their loved one and so forth. And along that same line, others will start to volunteer or whatever. But again, as the theory is always, is try not to pull back into their own thoughts and feelings, because very often our thoughts sometimes portray things. There's this old saying that I try to remind people, that things in life are not as bad as my mind makes them out to be. And so we need to kind of sometimes get outside of our mind and outside of our thoughts, and that we can do that sometimes by engagement.
Dr. Markwell, we appreciate you very much, and thank you for always coming on and discussing our topics. I think next week we're going to talk about stress and anxiety, folks. We appreciate Dr. Markwell. Next week our topic will be stress and anxiety. This week, Dr. Markwell there, you can reach Ridgeline Counseling at 706-314-8807. As an office in McKaysville, Georgia, Dr. David Markwell, Ridgeline Counseling, and this has been a great, hey, just have fun, enjoy the holidays, and you know, if Uncle Joe is a little, I'll use that name, not particularly, just say, hey, don't engage. Happy holidays from us, and we'll be right back.